Today on the show, we welcome Allan back from FOSSDEM and enjoy an interview with Willem about DNS and MTU black holes. That plus all the week's news. Keep it tuned here to BSD Now, the place to be, SD. BSD Now, episode 127, DNS, Black Holes, and William, recorded February 3rd, 2016. Hey, I'm your host, Chris Moore.
And I'm Allan Jude.
We're glad to have you guys with us this week, and we're glad you made it back safely from FOSSDEM, Allan. So I know we don't have an official section in the notes to talk about this, but you got to give us, at least a brief overview of how the trip went and how the conference was.
It was quite good. I flew out Thursday night here and landed, it would be Friday morning there, and got really lucky. My hotel had a spare room and would let me check in at 9:30 in the morning. When was the last time that happened to you? I got really lucky. I wasn't looking forward to having to sit in the lobby until noon when I could have a room.
That happened years ago when I went to Germany for one of the BSD conferences, and it's like I showed up at 8 in the morning, and they're like, "You can't get in until 4."
Ooh, usually it's like noon or 1, not 4.
No, they were running really late. They're like, everything's booked, and we're still cleaning all the rooms. So, I just left my bags and had to find a coffee shop and try and stay awake.
Yeah,
that was fun.
I got lucky, and I got in my room and went to sleep until 2 in the afternoon.
Nice.
Well, I set my alarm for 1, and then I woke up and I was like, 2.
Yeah.
And then by then, Benedict was there, and then we walked around and figured out where the university was and how to find the right building when we went the next morning and so on.
Great.
But most of us actually didn't go to the first day of FOSSDEM. We had a FreeBSD Developer Summit. It was organized kind of late, so it ended up having to be on the Saturday. The plan for next year is definitely to do it on the Friday so that everybody can actually attend the first day of FOSSDEM as well.
Sure.
Because, part of the point of the FreeBSD developers going to FOSSDEM, unlike a regular, BSD only conference, is to actually interface with the people from the other projects, like, people working on Linux or, with Zen, they have Zen for Linux and Zen for BSD and collaborating with those. And
the cross-platform folks.
There was a lot of talk about reproducible builds and stuff and people from every project, both not just operating systems that want to have reproducible builds, but also individual applications and other people and security vendors and so on. And so getting to interface with all those people is important. So I know Baptiste had to only attend the morning part of the Dev Summit because in the afternoon he needed to be at FOSSDEM to meet with some other people.
Well, I guess we're hearing a lot more talk about reproducible builds now, so I'm wondering if 2016 will be the year when that starts landing and we start making that a thing.
Apparently FreeBSD itself is very close. And just the last couple more things, and we hopefully will have that, and that'll be great.
I'm looking forward to a time when we look back and go, man, I can't imagine life without reproducible builds. Like, there was a time when you did that? Like, maybe this will just become the new standard operating procedure going forward.
Of course, the big argument there is always, well, I like when my uname tells me, what revision number it was built from, on what day, and which source tree. And so the idea is basically
you dump that to some text file somewhere and let uname read it on demand. So at least
in this case, I think it'll be a make.conf flag that turns it back on, or maybe it'll be on for head and off for releases, or something like that. Kind of just like the debug kernel. If you're building a debug kernel, then maybe you don't want it reproducible. You want the stats about, which of my 10 source trees did I build this kernel from? Whereas...
That makes sense.
Especially, imagine ZFS boot environments where I have kernels with 8 different patches. It'd be really nice to tell them apart.
Yeah.
But when I'm doing, FreeBSD 10 release, I'd like to be able to prove that, even though I downloaded this binary update from FreeBSD, that it actually came from the source code that I have access to.
Well, who's to say changing the tag on a kernel, for example, isn't part of the reproducible build? Right. In other words, having that string there, if I build it, same code with the same tag, it should be identical, right?
But the goal is to keep the instructions required to reproduce actually short. So I don't have to say, set these 10 variables to get your environment to be the same, but rather have that be the default. And if you're one of those crazy developers that wants something specific, you can override those instead or something like that.
Well, that's sounds like they're making progress. I'd love to see a little bit more about that, maybe at one of the next conferences.
Yes, and I think some of the stuff was videoed at the BSD Dev Room, but apparently there was a problem with the mic pack, and so I don't know how the audio is. No. And then on the Sunday, we had the BSD Dev Room, and we had presentations from basically every corner of the different projects. There was, Edge BSD was talking about stuff. There was Electro BSD. There was Haiku OS asking about maybe, was this become a BSD somehow? And then
what's Electro BSD, by the way? I don't know if we've talked about that.
That's the one for. They've submitted a lot of documentation patches and stuff, but mostly it's removing all the binary blobs and doing a bunch of other things.
Oh, okay.
They found a lot of bugs in their work. I think they actually have reproducible builds working.
Okay.
And I don't know.
That makes sense.
It's a science project, and they do a lot of different things, and a lot of it's cool. And I've seen them send a lot of bug reports and patches, both for documentation and for code, back into FreeBSD. So I definitely appreciate that. I gave my interesting things you can do with ZFS talk. When I first got there, the very first session, there weren't that many people in the room, maybe like 15. And I was like, oh, this is small. But then about halfway through, I guess some other session ended or something, and then the room started filling up.
And came pouring in.
And by the time I was ready to start my ZFS talk, there were no available seats, and all the standing room was taken. They had put a sign on the door that no more people could fit in the room. It's pretty crazy.
Hey, if you came too late, your own fault. You missed it. That's great.
I wasn't expecting that.
Oh, that's really cool. So how was the BSD track? I know you said there was one going on.
It was good. I did my talk about ZFS. Baptiste talked about reproducible packages, actually getting there for ports. Obviously not every package will be reproducible because we don't control everybody's different things. But with Poudriere already, giving you a clean jail, you already have removed a lot of the possible variability there. And so hopefully for a good subset of packages, we'll be able to have reproducible packages as well. The big advantage to that is you can then have package diffs. So that will definitely be useful for the base system, but also even just for packages. Sure. When you do, package update and upgrade, and you only have to download the small delta that change rather than the whole package over again. I'm sure that will make PCBSD users happy. It's like...
Yes, we have some things like the Noto fonts, which are 400, 500 megs compressed, right? And 9 times out of 10, the fonts haven't changed at all. It's just a slight port change. So the make file got adjusted. Yep. But the contents haven't changed, so this makes a lot of sense.
Yep, and, just in general, with the number of packages it takes to build a fancy graphical environment on a laptop, you could end up downloading, a gig with every major package update.
That would be great.
Yeah.
That would be great. So BAP's still working on that? I guess that's in progress now?
He's mostly providing details so other people could work on it, I think. But lots of interesting stuff there. Bernard Spill talked about LibreSSL updates, OpenSSL, and the private SSL stuff that he and I were working on.
Did he get his laptop finished up, or he's got LibreSSL in the base now? I know he was hacking on it right
now. I'm not sure if he had that or not. But they were. He was talking about the work on it and about the life cycle, and basically, in general, it probably doesn't make sense to end up with LibreSSL in the base system because the support time for LibreSSL is like 6 months to a year, and the support lifetime for a branch of FreeBSD is 5 years. And so that obviously poses some problems.
Sure.
But the full schedule is up on the FOSDEM website, and hopefully there will be videos.
Cool. Okay. Well, we'll of course bring those to you when they finally do land online, so you can revisit some of them.
Yeah, if you go to the schedule and click on the individual talks, there are links to download the slides, at least for all of them, I think, already.
Okay.
So.
That's cool. That's a start.
Indeed.
Well, great. Okay, so let's move right on here. So we got FreeBSD quarterly status reports have landed, and those can get quite long, but we got a lot of goodies in here. So I think you did the notes on this one, Allan, so why don't you tell us a little about some of the highlights of this quarters?
Yes. So I tried to trim it down a little bit so we don't spend half an hour just reading the status
30
report.
minutes just reading the status.
Yeah, but basically this provides a a review of all the progress and the work that was being worked on or completed in the last quarter of 2015. So that's like October through December. A lot of this is stuff that will land in time for 10.3 or 11. And most of those are annotated with that in the notes here. But some of the stuff that stood out to us, there were lots of reports from the different teams that work on things, including some new teams. There's a new issue triage team, which is trying to get bugs reclassified and pointed to the right people in a timely fashion, because that's usually, if a bug gets pointed to the right developer within, a few days of being reported, it means that if that developer asks a question, the original reporter is still around to answer. But, if the developer doesn't end up finding it for 6 months, then the user's probably, worked around the issue or given up or something, and then
doesn't remember what the details were.
Yeah,
right?
or doesn't have the system. Yeah, and so it, having that team in place should help get more bugs closed. There's a report from the Bugmeister team about, managing the existing backlog. The Jenkins team about work they're doing to, improve the continuous integration and testing. A new IPv6 advocacy team, saying, specifically there's a growing number of hosts now that are IPv6 only, including some of the infrastructure jails on the FreeBSD project. Well, that makes for a problem downloading ports where the hosts don't support v6. A lot of things, at least there's some mirror that supports v6, but not always. And FreeBSD itself maintains a dist file cache to deal with sometimes, when the website that's hosting the upstream goes down or goes away. But it often takes a little while before the disk cache actually ends up caching something. And so the problem can be there is that maybe it doesn't have a cache of the newest tarball of this program. So there's a new security update for an application you depend on, and their mirror doesn't provide v6, and the FreeBSD disk cache doesn't have the new file yet, and so you're stuck with no way to get it. So this is a group of people that are going around and trying to prod more people into getting v6 mirrors for their open source code. And there's the new wiki admin team, which is going to take care of updating the wiki and keeping it going, but also curating the information, at least flagging, if not removing old stuff. I know there's a bunch of information on root on ZFS for FreeBSD 9.0 on there, and it's like, no, you don't have to do all that. It's so much easier now, or doing that is actually risky. Don't do that.
Bitrot is real, my friends, even on the wiki.
Yeah, especially for the wiki. That information gets stale quick, so they're going through and at least flagging that and cleaning it up, and mostly trying to improve the navigation. Currently, there's a lot of stuff that's buried a couple levels deep on the wiki, and unless Google happens to pick up on it, you'll never find that information. That it's like the answer to your question is actually on the wiki. It's just you can't find it. So trying to index that and make sure that you never have to click more than 2 links to end up at the page that has the information you want, I think will help a lot. And obviously, as a, if you're a non-developer member of the community and you'd like to contribute, it's a great way to get started. And you can contact that team about helping out.
All right.
But all the different teams have status reports letting us know what's going on. There was a status report about the i915 driver, which we're all eagerly awaiting. There was also actually a talk about how users can help with the i915 improvements at FOSDEM. So make sure you grab the slides from that and see that if you didn't, because you definitely want to know what's going on there.
Well, they said it's almost ready to land, the update on the kernel side, so that's good.
Yes.
We'll finally get that in head here soon. Probably not 10.3, I'd imagine, because that's all, that's past now, but at least for 11.
Yes, and they even mentioned FOSDEM in the report here, saying that looking forward to it, because this report was before FOSDEM, but as a chance to meet up with more people from the X-Developers Conference, and he gave a talk on how to contribute to the graphic stack so that we can get more users helping.
Okay. Cool.
Then on the storage subsystem, one of the most interesting bits of news I saw is RCTL, which is the resource control system in FreeBSD, which you can use to limit the amount of memory or CPU that a specific process, user, or jail can use, is being expanded to allow you to rate limit disk I/O. So you can set read and write bytes per second or IOPS to control how much of your disk a certain application user or jail can use, which I definitely see that being useful. It's like, oh, there's this one application, but it's using up all my disk I/O. Or, I have this torrent running is using up all my disk. How about I say you can only use this many of my IOPS so that there's some left for, the actual work I'm trying to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see hosts doing a lot of jails being very happy to have some of these controls. This is nice.
I need to look into this more and see how fine-grained you can get, because it'd be really amazing if you could control this for any user but per ZFS dataset, like per file system too. That would be amazing.
Really slick. Well, I imagine getting the first bits in will make adding that second part a lot easier.
Exactly.
Down the road, where you can do some kind of impedance matching. Like, well, if you're pulling stuff from this data set, oh, wait, it matches this limit. You're good to go. That's going to be great.
Yep. There's also a status report on Warner Losh's CAM IO scheduler, which is all about tuning SSDs, specifically, only allow writes up to this speed, allow writes to go as fast as they can until it starts impacting the read speed, and then throttle the writes back so that make sure you can always get maximum read speed while still getting as much writing done as possible.
Nice.
Okay. Then Mellanox has their iSCSI extensions for remote direct memory access, or ISER, and the driver for that is going to be in 11. And they also have a driver for their 100 gigabit Ethernet and fiber channel network cards. And then Chelsea has updated their driver with iSCSI offload. So the CPU that's on the network card has a bunch of iSCSI features, and you can pass the work off to that card instead of having to do them on the CPU. And that's for both the target and the initiator. So whether you're the client or the server, you can let the NIC do a lot of the work and leave more performance on the server.
Nice.
In the security department, there's work on an encrypted crash dumps. So, if your system crashes and you dump all the memory into your swap to debug the problem after the fact, well, that might contain, passwords for a browser session you have open or all kinds of different things. And so this is a system to actually encrypt the data before it gets written to the dump, and being able to save the dump out and then decrypt it. And that way, other people couldn't have access to the memory of your system after a crash. There's also updates to OpenBSM, which is the auditing framework, and a big status report from HardenedBSD. For embedded, new support for RA-Link and MediaTek MIPS devices. The Raspberry Pi video acceleration stuff got a package so that you can take advantage of all of that. There's now touchscreen support for the Raspberry Pi and the BeagleBone Black.
That'd be cool.
A new port for the Marvel Armada 38X processors, and then obviously status reports on the work for ARM64 and the RISC-V processor architectures.
I saw something on Twitter about that over the weekend, about the RISC-V, I guess, FreeBSD being the first OS to have that all in tree now.
Yep.
That's cool.
Then Kib at FreeBSD also rewrote the out-of-memory handler that's built into FreeBSD. So this is the program that if your system's running out of memory, one of the most interesting things is that oftentimes freeing memory takes actually a little bit more memory. Right? You have to allocate the thing, the mapping to say I'm moving this to swap or to, bunch of different things like that. And so you can end up in a deadlock situation if you are running out of RAM and don't have enough RAM to allocate more to free and so on. And so there's an out of memory killer system, which basically picks an application and kills it in order to free up enough memory to avoid deadlocking the system. And its criteria was mostly based on how much swap space was available and so on.
Sure.
But if you're an embedded system with, say, read-only flash or something, maybe you don't have any swap. And then if you have no swap, it considers swap full, and then it's more eager to go and kill things. And just in general, it was not well tuned for what systems look like today. So he rewrote that and tested it on quite a range of systems, all the way down to 32 megabytes of RAM for little embedded devices, up to 512 gigabytes of RAM for your big iron servers, and make sure that it does the right thing in all of those cases.
Nice.
Yep. There's also various improvements to the toolchain, LLVM and Clang, LLDB, LLD, and so on, as well as the build system. Brian Drew's done a lot of work to make it take less time to build the entire operating system, including better parallelization, the dependency framework, so that when you try to build something, it knows that I have to build this other thing first. He did a lot of speed ups there. Proper support for Ccache, so that if you're compiling world a lot, you can cache a lot of that. Or if you're compiling a lot of different trees, say you're building the snapshots for release engineering, a lot of that code's going to end up being the same, and so having a cache will save you a lot of build time. And there's something else in there too. Anyway, lots of improvements there. And then Werner Losch has a report on his modernization of NanoBSD.
Oh, great. Mm-hmm. That'll be nice.
And then it was nice also to see lots of reports from ports committers. Obviously the regular stuff about KDE and GNOME being updated, but there's also a new Qt-based version of LXDE.
Yeah, they switched to Qt a while back, and so we'll finally get that. I saw GitLab's in the works, too.
Yep. And also just reports from some new committers talking about what they're working on, including some tools for making it faster to develop Python ports, but basically just taking the metadata from a PyPy package and turning it into a FreeBSD port, and a bunch of other interesting tools. And yeah,
that'll be great.
And then there's also an overview, one article that overviews all the different init replacements, including LaunchD, Relaunch, NoSH, etc. And then each of those actually has its own separate status report. So if you're interested in any of that, definitely check it out.
That is pretty cool. Yeah, I was definitely looking at the init system stuff. I'm pleased to see RelaunchD is going along here nicely, and Nosh looks interesting as well. So see what ends up landing. Okay, anything else you want to mention out of those here? There's a lot.
A bunch of work from Microsoft on the Hyper-V stuff.
Yeah.
Updates on Zen. Yeah. Just
basically,
a ton
you
of
should
stuff.
Check it out.
Just a ton
there's still a lot of other stuff. I mean, there's everything on there, including Node.js modules that are going into Portstree. So yeah, check it out. Lots of cool things.
Lots more driver updates and new features, and the new vNode cache tuning has been definitely improved, and lots of different things.
Nice. Okay. Well, let's see. So next up here, I guess we got a guide to FOSS conferences here that you've linked to, which I guess is timely considering you were just at FOSSDEM. But go ahead and tell us a bit about this. What are they going to advise us?
Yeah. So this is basically a guide for, especially if it's your first time or first few times attending open source conference. Kind of just covers quite the gamut of conferences. Sometimes your first conference is like a 30 user group or mini conference, or it could be something like OzCon, or FOSSDEM with 5,000 plus people.
Yeah,
they can be all over the map. But basically, it just provides the 10 rules of enjoying the conference. Number one, which I definitely agree with, is the hallway track matters the most. It's definitely, you get more out of that often than the talks, right? As I said.
Well, 9 times out of 10, you can go back and watch the talk or listen to it later if it's recorded. But that hallway conversation, you don't get another opportunity to do that.
They say here, conference talks are great because they teach you new skills or give you new ideas. However, what conference talks are really about is giving you additional topics of conversation to chat with your fellow conference goers about. Right, hanging out after a talk to talk to the speaker or just other people from the audience that are interested in this is definitely where the point of the conference comes in. The hallway track is the best part of the conference, right? I've ended up missing as much as 2/3 of the actual talks at a conference, and still found it more valuable than other conferences I've been to where I went to every single talk, because in the case where there's people to talk to or other stuff to do, then, I don't get to see these people in person very often, and you can get a lot more done in that amount of time than other things.
No, I agree. Sometimes just sitting down at a booth with a couple of laptops and looking at a problem or coming up with some solution, that can be just infinitely more valuable than sitting at a talk.
Yeah.
So it just depends on what you're there for.
I remember back in 2013 at Malta at the EuroBSDCon there, everybody's wanting package, but we didn't have official packages yet, and signing was a big problem, and Bapt and Des and a couple of people sat down on the floor in the corner somewhere, and by the end of that day, we had a working system.
Yeah,
and if they had tried to coordinate over email or IRC in their different time zones, and
it's not the same.
Yeah, it just wouldn't have got done the same way. They also go on, it's important to remember that missing a talk is not the end of the world. That discussion in the hallway may be much more valuable. Most of the talks end up being on YouTube anyway, so you can always catch it there. Although I say that and oftentimes never get time to get back to that.
Right.
But
it's because you're always on to the next conference, right? It's like, who has time to go back?
The point of the conference is being in the same place as those people. The talks are just a means to get everybody there in the first place. But really, yes, the conference is about being there with those people, not necessarily about just hearing that talk, because, you can get that out of YouTube or whatever. And that's why I've never been worried that conferences are going to have problems because too many people want to just watch it online. It's like, if you're just watching the talk online, you're kind of missing the point of the conference. Sure, you gain some of the knowledge from the talk, but you're missing the point of the conference.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, they go on with lots of stuff. It's okay to skip a session. Triple conflict sessions are common. This is, sometimes you look at the schedule and it's like, well, there is actually no talk that I really am that interested in right now. And then the next slot, it's like, well, I want to be in all three of those at the same time. Hey, if you think that's bad at BSD Can or Euro with, 3 or 4 tracks, then you look at the schedule for FOSSDEM where there are 43 concurrent things happening.
My gosh.
And it's like, well, luckily, a lot of these are not of no interest to me. But, yeah, it's definitely, pick the one where, you're going to learn the most or someone. I found that.
Or the one the least about already.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to get your feet wet on it.
Exactly. Then they have a bunch of information here for people who are, introverts or socially anxious and so on. Mentioning, oftentimes conference start as early as like 9 a.m. and then maybe there's a break for lunch, but maybe that break's actually fairly short and you don't get much time. And then they keep going till like 5 or 6. And then maybe they give you a little bit of time, but, then there's evening events that start as early as 7 or, almost. I know BSD Cam, we basically had to like run from the conference to dinner. If you remember the social event, because the fire alarm ate our little bit of window we had there.
Hopefully that won't happen this year.
Indeed. And, then the conference goers tend to go out and hang out together and keep talking until the middle of the morning. And so, if you're the type of person where you find that quite exhausting and so on, Sarah Sharp here recommends, find that talk, that spot in the schedule where there was no talk you're really interested in, and, go somewhere and sit quietly or even go back to your hotel and have a nap or something to recharge yourself so that you'll be able to get more benefit out of the evening social event, which, is basically the hallway track writ large, right?
Mm-hmm.
But lots of good information there. And then, just general care and feeding. It's like, remember that, we got these short breaks and so on. Oftentimes, you don't eat very well at a conference. I know in Tokyo, I eat really well. Yes.
Yeah, it just depends on which conference you're at.
Yes.
And who's doing the catering.
Yes. Well, and, dinner is usually fairly good, but sometimes lunch is pretty fast foody or whatever. Or you just, there's been times where I've just like missed lunch because I was busy talking to people. It's like, oh, well, I can eat a couple of cookies. It's like, well, I probably shouldn't live off just cookies, though. But, they also, drink lots of water. That's a big thing for me, talking so much. Sometimes by the end of the day, my voice doesn't want to work anymore.
Sure.
Yeah. But he recommends, drink water, maybe even bring vitamins to take to keep yourself up, especially, if you're in a foreign city or a foreign place where the food might not agree with you or something, or just where
you're already jet lagged.
Yes, and you're already jet lagged and you're trying to make it up, So pack yourself a bottle of water and maybe some fruit snacks or animal crackers. Going on about knowing the conference perks. What does the conference actually provide? Do they provide lunch or do I have to go out on my own, and how do I find time for that? But she also specifically mentioned back when she was a student, not knowing that a bunch of these conferences provide travel grants or even just discounts for students to make it less expensive to come to the conference. I know like BSD Can has a much lower price for students, and with Google and the FreeBSD Foundation providing travel grants for people, there's lots of ways to help get you to the conference. But yes, if you're speaking, a lot of times conferences will, if you're a speaker, they provide you with free entrance to the conference. I know, some conferences only provide you the day you're speaking, but all the BSD ones that I know of give you full everything for being a speaker. Cool. And then she talks about the double-edged sword of swag. Not just, I got this bag of stuff I have to carry around now. I know that happened at BSD Con the one year. I had a bag full of stuff, and then, we went out for dinner, and I was like, well, there's no time to go back to my hotel, so I'm going to have to bring this with me. And then it rained, and then it rained, and then it rained some more. Yeah. And, my proceedings book was like melting. I was like, wow, I really wish I had managed to get this back to my hotel. But also some of the bigger conferences, especially the more commercial ones, she talks about on your badge, sometimes I'll have like a barcode with your email address and other stuff. And the booths that, at the BSD conferences, there's usually not that many booths, but at some of the bigger conferences like OddsCon, there's lots. And they will scan your barcode, which has your email address and stuff, and then, start sending you mail or...
don't just let anybody you don't know scan that.
Yes, then, you don't
want to give that out.
Exactly. You can cover it up with a sticker or something if you don't want other people to have it and so on. And, a lot of times the giveaways or whatever they're doing at these booths are about getting your information, not about just being cool by giving away an iPad or something. That was I know when they did the giveaway at FreeBSD Con, it was just guessing the number of components in a jar, and they didn't actually want your email address or anything. Anyway, and then number 9 was about follow-ups. When you meet people and, talk about working on a project together, or, if you meet a recruiter or somebody that maybe might have a position that you're interested in, making sure you follow up, but, give people a couple days to get back, if from traveling, and maybe catch up on their emails so that it's not, getting mixed in with all the bulk of all the things they missed while they were gone. But, you don't want to wait more than about 2 weeks, because by then, the memories of matching names to faces from the conference will quickly start to fade. Especially, I'm really bad with names, but, it takes a while for me to get to know people, and it very quickly fades after a conference. It's like, I recognize that face. I've met you before, but I can't remember your name. I recognize
far more faces than I remember names.
Indeed.
That's for sure.
And so, following up within 2 weeks will definitely increase your chances of that. And then number 9 is definitely something I've experienced, which is project passion explosion. We talk about going to these conferences to recharge your battery and get excited about projects. Part of the problem can be you get excited about too many projects at once. And then you're trying to work on too many things at once, and you end up just burning yourself out. Or just spending so much time thinking about all these cool things you could be doing and not actually getting one of them done. True. Yeah. Don't try to start more than one project.
Don't overcommit.
Yeah. Don't try to start more than one project, the week after a conference. Wait a little bit and see how the first one goes, and see which ones you're still passionate about after a week or two. But, you definitely, unless it's a time machine, and then you want it right away so that you can get more time.
Yes, that's right.
Yes. But yeah, I know for myself, after FOSDEM and other things that have happened lately, there's at least 10 projects that I would like to be working on right now.
Oh, sure.
And I don't have the time to do it. And, a couple of these, are dictated by my free time or my work schedule or how useful it is for work. Or the FreeBSD release schedule. It's like, well, even though I want to work on this, I should do this other thing first because it needs to be done before the release. And this other one, maybe it can wait till after. And then some of the stuff I'm like, well, I guess it would really be better for someone else to work on this one because, it's not as big of an attraction to me, and maybe I don't have the expertise, and it would take me longer to catch up on this when I could actually be working on these 3 other things that I'm already caught up on, and so on. But...
and most bang for your buck as far as your time's concerned. That's a biggie to consider.
Yeah, which is actually one of the points I was making in my talk for BSD Con is like, this project was interesting and I learned a lot and I gained quite a bit from it. But really, it wasn't scratching an itch that I actually had. So why did I do this?
Right?
Why did I put myself through all this? Oh, it's just so boot environments would work.
Right?
Because Chris kept nagging me. The jelly boot.
The jelly one I made you do?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, thanks for Chris for continuing to nag me to get this done.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Is that almost done now? Can we?
It's usable, yeah.
Okay. Hey, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully that'll be something you never have to go back and look at. I imagine if it lands in the tree, other people might.
Yep.
Take it
although
I
have to get the UEFI part of it done. That's not been started yet.
Oh, yeah.
I'm hoping to have that done in time for when I present about it at BSD Can.
Nice. Okay. Cool. Well, thank you, Allan. That sounds like a great guide. If you've never been to one of these, first of all, try and come. Like, you should. It's a great experience, but definitely take a look at this guide beforehand. Might give you some tips so you can survive the experience, especially when you're traveling a long way away to a conference. And it's not something local.
Even my first conference wasn't that far. BSD Can was like a 4-hour train ride or a 1-hour flight. But my very first time, I didn't know what to expect, and I mostly focused on going to talks rather than meeting people, and didn't get as much out of it. I had a very good time, and definitely decided I'm coming back next year. But I was a bit nervous and kind of just stuck with people I knew. And the other problem I kind of had was if there was a group of people, I didn't want to just go up to them and like join the group. I was like nervous about that. It's like, well, I'm just some new user that nobody's heard of before. Sure. But I think it was my first Asia BSDCon, actually. All the people I knew took off and went somewhere else, and I was kind of left. It's like, well, I'm going to make some new friends, so I have somebody to hang out with. And luckily, one of those was...
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and luckily, one of those was Michael Dexter, and he was very good about introducing me to people and helping me broaden out. And now, I'm perfectly comfortable to go to conferences in foreign countries by myself.
Yeah, that is definitely a biggie, especially if you're in a foreign country and you don't speak the language natively. So you're kind of bound to just the conference folks who are there and also speak English.
Yep.
So definitely get a group of guys, go out, grab lunch or whatever. Next thing you know, you get some new friends, and it'll make next year all the easier.
Yep, and even just my first time in Tokyo, trying to figure out how to get to my hotel was quite a challenge. But now I understand the subway system, and I have the little
now you're a pro.
touch card, and it's easy.
Yeah, we don't look like noobs anymore. We're sitting there fumbling with the tickets or whatever.
Yeah, so looking at the machine. I go up to the machine, and it's like the station I want isn't listed here. How does that work? Is it the wrong line, the wrong company? Am I taking the wrong kind of train, it turns out?
Yeah. How much does the ticket cost?
Yes.
Do I need to pay more or less?
And then for that one, I learned a trick. Because of the way the Japanese system works, if you don't know, buy the cheapest ticket, which is like 95 cents. Okay. And then when you get to where you want to go, it won't let you leave because you haven't paid enough. But right behind the gates that let you out is the fare adjustment machine. And you stick your ticket in, and it figures out how much you need to pay to get off here, and then you put in the money, and then it gives you the updated ticket, and you can leave.
Yeah, that's always fun the first time you go. Yeah. Trying to figure that out.
But then you figure out for $5 you get the card, you load money on it, and it just lets you go and warns you when it's low.
By the way, if you're going to Tokyo this year and this is your first time, don't forget to buy the card.
Yes.
Just get it and save yourself the hassle. Put $20 on it, and you're good to go for a couple days.
There's, depending which airport you're at, there's a kiosk there where you can actually get a bundle where you get the card with so much money on it and the express train from the airport into the city. Yeah. And stuff like that.
That's what I've done. That's been very handy.
Of course, at this point, I've got my card from like 3 years ago, and I've just there's enough money. Before I leave, I dump all my change into one of the machines and load up the card because I don't want to carry around all the little coins, and they have coins that go up to like $5. So my card's got lots of money on it, so I won't need to charge it this year when I get there. It's got all my change from last year on it.
Cool. Okay, well, I guess we should move on to the next article here.
So we got on the third story.
I know, right? This is crazy. Well, next up, we got a FreeBSD 10.1 based Wi-Fi captive portals. So, of course, captive portals have been the bane of many a traveler's existence. However, they are necessary evil in the era of war driving and, of course, other potentially nefarious uses of free Wi-Fi. So this week we have a nice article from the guys over at Unix Men showing in very, very great detail how they set up a FreeBSD 10.1 based captive portal. And yes, there's going to be some manual MySQL commands involved. So how cool is that? Did you actually read this one, Allan?
I haven't seen. No, but I saw the one last week and figured it would be about the same.
Yeah, it's pretty stinking detailed. So first up, they start with a diagram kind of showing the layout of where they're going to be using their new portal system, using multiple access points for different floors of what we assume is an apartment or a hotel. So a pretty typical setup there. Now, the walkthrough is going to assume ahead of time that you already have Apache, MySQL, and PHP installed. So you'll need to prep those bits beforehand if you're planning on attempting something like this. But first up, they start with the Apache configuration, which is going to start by redirecting all standard web requests over port 80 to the 443 SSL port and to the captive portal web login page. So you can capture everyone at that point. That's the easy part. Then it gets more interesting. So at this point, they will install the pair port or package and begin to do some database setup, which if you've done any MySQL before, it's pretty typical. You create user database table, grant permissions on blah, 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 to foo, etc. So they have it all documented there. You can just copy and paste most of it if you'd like. But when the database is finished, they give you a nice clean rc.conf you can throw on the system, which will enable all the necessary services. Now, next up in the configuration is going to be firewall setup, and it looks like they're using IPFW specifically, but IPFW with dummynet, IP alias, IP divert, and some other friends. Now, the article does mention you should compile a new minimal kernel with these features, and if you're planning on doing this, I'd probably just start with that just to get it out of the way first.
Although all of these can be done modularly
via
now.
module.
Yeah.
Well, they do mention making a minimal kernel, so I think they're stripping other stuff out. They didn't list specifically what they stripped out, and I suppose you could just leave that up to the reader, go through, and if you don't need this, and that, remove them. But anyway, if you're going to do that, I would start there personally. That's just me. I like to get the kernel stuff out of the way so I can boot and not have to reboot again later. Anyway, after they've done that, they then walk you through setting up the DHCP server. Then you have some sudo set up so that the PHP can do different things like opening firewall rules. And then they have a whole list of PHP files here, and everything's all written out. You can copy and paste. That will act as the interface between your client and the MySQL database to keep track of state, who's logged in, and when and where and all that, and then the firewall rules. But when it's all said and done, if you follow this to a T, you're going to end up with a nice web interface for clients. Plus, you even get a bonus admin interface, so you don't have to do everything from the command line. You could have an employee sitting there with a web browser and granting access to the Wi-Fi, creating and removing users, which is pretty stinking cool. So for convenience, if all the copy and paste and all the configuration and files just kind of makes your eyes gloss over, they do have a link at the end to all the files and config use. So you could just grab that, extract it, and avoid some of the manual work here and keep it to a minimum. But all in all, you end up with a nice FreeBSD-based access point captive portal system, which is pretty cool. And I'd like to see more people doing this.
Yeah, definitely better than most of the other ones I've encountered at hotels and so on.
Yeah, this would be the way to go, especially better than some of the integrated solutions out there. So more people need to switch to FreeBSD at your hotel. So if you're a hotel manager, take note of this. Get your IT people on this.
Yeah, the hotel we had the Dev Summit at FOSSDEM didn't even have a captive portal. It just worked.
Oh, really?
That was very nice.
Oh, okay.
And then my hotel had a captive portal, but you just had to agree to the terms and click start. You didn't have to use the username and password or anything. And it was just having to click the start button every 12 hours, which isn't bad.
Okay, well, that's not bad at all. Well, cool. Well, anyway, take a look at this. If this is something you do at your work or you're interested in for your place of business, hotel, etc., definitely take a look at this. This may be a neat way to do it. This was all based on FreeBSD 10.1, so a little bit older base, but I'd imagine most of this will apply to 10.2 or the upcoming 10.3 just as easily.
Yep.
Okay, so next up we have Sailor. So, of course, in the world of Docker, jails, and VMs, containers are pretty much all the rage right now. And now we can introduce the new Sailor to this mix. So what is Sailor, you ask? What's unique about this? Well, first of all, it's based upon Chroot and PKGN. And it's available on NetBSD, OS X, and Debian specifically. So
this CentOS rather than Debian here.
Oh, CentOS, yes. Excuse me. I don't know why I put that on there. But I will fix that, or I guess you're fixing it right now. There you go. All right. But since it's not using jail or any other security mechanism, they do give us this caveat, so something to be aware of. They say, note that Sailor's goal is not to provide bulletproof security. Chroot is definitely not a trustable isolator. Instead, Sailor is a really convenient way of trying and testing an environment without compromising your workstation file system, which is very useful in and of itself. Plus, it's cool that this is available on NetBSD. So they have some examples in here if you go to the GitHub site. But creating what they call a new ship is relatively straightforward. It's basically just a small shell file with its got some defines in it, so you can just supply most of the relevant information. For example, if you look at the show notes here, we have a link to their Nginx one they've created an example of, and I think it's like 4 or 5 lines. You're basically just saying, here's the packages we want to install, and it does the rest. So in addition, though, if you want to do some more advanced stuff, besides basic package configuration, it does provide methods for doing read-write or read-only mounts into the root. I imagine some kind of nullfs trickery to do that, as well as IP aliases. And they have a section where you can copy specific binaries into the container too. So if you have something on the host that you need to propagate in, you could potentially do that as well. But either way, it looks like it's definitely something neat. Not all those features work on OS X. I think the mounting in is something that BSD exclusive at this point. So just keep that in mind. But definitely take a look at that here. Definitely a lot of cool container management going on.
Yeah, so this one's mostly just about having separate package environments, kind of like there's something like that for Ruby and Python, right? Where you end up to get virtual environments where you can have different dependencies installed. So, sometimes that's all I'm really using a jail for, is to get this clean environment so that the packages I install don't mess up something with my base system, or if I want to have 2 different versions of something installed, I put one of them in a jail. And so you can achieve that mostly with just a CH root. And the advantage to this Sailor framework is the fact that it can work on more than just the one operating system.
That's pretty nice.
Yeah, so I assume it's pretty close to be working on FreeBSD as well.
I would imagine it's somewhat portable. I mean, it's shell-based as long as it can do package source type stuff. I would think it's very portable. They could probably even switch it to use PKG to do the initial package population. So very cool. Okay, so before we get to our interview for the week, we're going to need to mention our first sponsor this week, which is going to be DigitalOcean. And of course, the website for that is digitalocean.com. And just go to that address. There's no /BSD Now or anything. Instead, we have the coupon code FreeBSD Now. And that's what you'll use. And that's so we can get credit that, hey, you heard about it here. But you'll want to use that because that's going to give you a $10 credit for your account, which is good for basically running 2 months of a VM for free, backed by SSDs in a variety of different locations around the world, which is pretty stinking cool. And of course, their web interface is pretty much second to none. Makes it super simple to spin up new droplets. Of course, you can spin up ones running FreeBSD. Afterwards, you could change it. Maybe load up OpenBSD in there or NetBSD. There's definitely different ways you can do it. And spinning up takes about less than 60 seconds, so pretty darn fast. And they have a full API too. So if doing things manually via web interface isn't your thing, you could script it to tear up and tear down droplets on the fly, which is pretty cool.
Also, just since they've been sponsoring the podcast, we've added a bunch of really interesting features. The first one is floating IP addresses. So this is basically a static IP address that you can move between one or more of the droplets or virtual machines inside the same data center. So you can create, high availability. It's kind of like CARP, but done at the level of their routers higher up in the network. And so you can use this to, flip between machines in order to upgrade them, or in one of your, if the application crashes on one of your VMs, it'll automatically switch it over to the second one, and so on. With their API, you can do pretty much anything with it, which is quite useful. They also have team accounts, right? If you're using this for more than just yourself, you can create a team account where your login has access to the billing information and so on, but other people can still create VMs or reboot the VM or whatever they need to do on your machine, rather than having to share your password. So that's definitely a feature that shows they're thinking about how to actually be useful to more than one person. And then they have their selection of data centers. Like we've mentioned before, they have San Francisco, Toronto, New York, London, Amsterdam, and Frankfurt,
Singapore,
plus the Singapore. Yeah, so with 7 locations to choose from, you can pretty much put the droplet wherever it makes most sense for you. And we've already mentioned the API and how crazy that is, but with all SSDs for storage and gigabit per second network connections, even the $5 droplet comes with a terabyte of bandwidth a month. I don't know where you're going to find something better.
Yeah, it's really cool. No reason not to try it, folks. And you get that coupon code, so there's really no risk in trying it. 2 months, give it a shot, see what you can do up there. It is nice having an external droplet I can spin up and do like Mumble and stuff, not on my local network, which is pretty darn cool. So anyway, guys, check it out at digitalocean.com. And of course, don't forget that coupon code. We're joined today by Willem Toorop, who's here to talk to us a little bit about Git DNS and some other stuff happening over in the Netherlands. So first of all, thank you for coming on the show today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is good. I know you're on the other side of the world, so it's always good when we can make time to make this happen. But we've not had you on the show before, so we have to ask you the getting started question. So tell us a little bit about your story. How did you first get introduced to BSD and Unix in general?
Well, I was came in contact with Unix at school in 1990. I started a bachelor on software engineering, and we used to have a Sequent, a terminal room with terminals on a Sequent Unix computer.
Mm-hmm.
And Unix didn't mean that much to me at the time. We did have email and Usenet News, though. That made an impression on me at the time. But I did an internship at the University of Amsterdam for environmental research during that study. And there I had a RS6000 IBM workstation, which I used daily, and also a live internet connection. 10 megabits, I think. So.
Oh wow, that was rocking back in the day.
Absolutely. And yes, so I fell in love with Unix.
What version was that running at the time?
I'm not sure. It's called AIX.
Yep.
That's what I'm sure that it was running, but not sure which version. Yeah.
Yes, for those of our younger listeners, AIX was another Unix, right? Back in the day. Okay, well, great.
So what different open source projects have you worked on over the course of your career?
I'm sorry, what's different?
Open source projects, different things that people might have used. Have you worked on?
Yes. Well, so I started developing on open source myself only in 2011 when I started working for NLnet Labs. But I've used open source all since 1993, right? Just everything. But I started working at the Amsterdam School for the Arts in 94 to set up the interfaculty networking. And I did that using open source products, also FreeBSD on the servers, and Cyrus IMAP for email, for example.
Okay. When was that? What version of FreeBSD did you hop onto there? You don't remember?
I don't.
If it was like 94, 95, it's a pretty early version.
Yeah, it was early.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other projects, open source projects you helped with over the years?
Yes, so since I started working at NLnet Labs, I've been working on LDNS, the DNS library. And that was my immediate assignment, and also to do the maintenance of the NetDNS Perl library. But at NLnet Labs, we are a very small team, and we work very closely together. So we all do each other project, the code reviews for each other, and so I also did fix bugs in NSD and Unbound, and I wrote a patched version of NSD because there was some interest for a hop in the wire DNS forwarder. It was basically NSD. It was a patched version of NSD that would accept incoming zone transfers, and then spawned an external program to do some assessment for example, to test if DNSSEC was properly done, if everything validated, and if not, then it could stop getting it published, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. So what exactly do you guys do over at NLNet Labs? What's the business there?
So NLNet Labs is a not-for-profit foundation, and we work on open standards, and especially on we try to implement those open standards. So we are always at ITF participating in the work groups working on the open standards, but we also try to bridge the gap with practice by actually implementing those things that are discussed there. That's what we do, and also research in the context of open standard development.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So how much BSD actually gets used at NLNet Labs?
Oh, well, at NLNet Labs everything is BSD. So all the servers are FreeBSD mostly. We have jail servers, right, with FreeBSD jails as the virtual machines on them, with CFS replicating to other jail servers so they can take over the virtual machines. I think many people having that similar setup. But,
Yes.
Oh, that's nice.
We like that one.
use OpenBSD, of course, with pfSense on as the gateway.
Okay.
To route it to the internet.
Do you guys, I guess since you're using ZFS, you guys doing anything with like boot environments and all the jails, I assume, are on ZFS as well?
Yes. Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's awesome. Is this running, you guys run current, or are you back on like 10.2 or something?
No. I'm a bit late. I'm afraid with updating all the machines.
Okay.
But so it's we are now on 9.3, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
you guys are bringing up the rear of the train there. That sounds good.
Yeah. So my colleague Jaap, he always runs the latest of the latest FreeBSD, and also the founder of NLNet Labs, Ted Lindgren, he also has a machine in our office running FreeBSD 10, the latest. So yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool.
So can you tell us a little bit about LDNS and what that is?
Yes, so LDNS started out with a project in 2004 called Drill, which was supposed. Drill is a alternative to DIG, the utility to do DNS lookups by ISC. And at the time, they wanted to have, or the initiators for Drill, Miek Giebe and Jelte Jansen, they wanted to have a alternative to assess DNSSEC operation, and also to test the new authoritative name server we had then, NSD. So therefore Drill came into existence, and after working on that for 6 months or so, they had the vision that much of the functionality that they needed for Drill could also be useful in other tooling. So they decided to put it all in a library and make it available for other people to use as well, to create open source DNS and DNSSEC tools with it.
Nice. What kind of license you guys use for those?
It's all 3-class BSD license.
Okay. Good deal.
That's all our software, yes.
Cool. Nice. Well, that's what I like to hear. More of that, the better. So tell us a little bit about the Get DNS API. What is that, and how did it get started?
Yeah, so GetDNS API started at the IETF actually by, it's not an IETF initiative, but application developers visiting the IETF, they more and more things interesting for applications were developed at the IETF, but they thought that they didn't have a library that would enable them to use those new standards for DNS. They felt that the libraries that were available, like LDNS, were more DNS-focused libraries written by DNS people for DNS people, and they felt that a library that was especially written for application developers was lacking. So they decided, well, if we want to have it, we have to specify what we want to have, right? What a library,
Sure.
especially for applications, would look like. So they made this specification, the GetDNS specification, which was at the time led by Paul Hofman. Community effort with application developers from the IETF. And then Alison Menkin from VeriSign Labs, she is also very active at the IETF. She noticed that initiative and she thought, well, that's nice to have such a specification, but it would be even nicer if it gets implemented as well. So she took up the initiative to take up the implementation, and she contacted NLNet Labs and also Synoden, a UK-based open software firm, and Melinda Shore. No Mountain Software is her organization, to do this implementation of this specification, which was not made by ourselves. Right.
Okay.
So that's how we got involved, and yeah.
Nice.
Cool.
Has been a very, very nice collaboration.
What time frame was that? When did that first get started, I guess?
In autumn 2013.
Okay, so that's still pretty recent.
So what are...
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh. Yeah, so the design of the specification, I don't know when exactly it happened, but we now also host a mailing list for the API specification mailing list, and that started in January 2013. So, yeah.
Cool.
So how does GetDNS compare to something like LDNS? What makes it different?
So the difference is exactly what the designers of the API intended. DNS is very much everything you can do with DNS, but it doesn't give you the big blocks to do only those things that are specifically interesting for applications. Like so GetDNS is basically a resolver library, and LDNS is more a manipulation of DNS data library. But for example, GetDNS offers a stub resolver and a full resolver. It actually uses libunbound for that, to do the full recursion. And it does that asynchronously. Right? That's important for application developers because they want to do it simultaneously with, or spin on their event loop and do it simultaneously with setting up other network connections, etc. So it's actually hooks into your application in how you designed your application. GetDNS also has, for example, the roadblock avoidance extension, which is very nice. It enables you to try to get DNSSEC operating as a step resolver, so talking to your upstreams. But if that doesn't work, if you get a bogus answer, then fall back on full recursion and try to get the answer that way. And this is different from another open source project we have at NLNet Labs, DNSSEC Trigger, because this is done on a per query basis. So if your application just needs to look up an address and doesn't care if it's secure or not, then you don't ask for DNSSEC, and the upstream will probably just work. But if you want to know if you want to do a DANE lookup and you want to have a validated answer for a digest of a remote certificate, you're going to set up a TLS collection and you want to verify the certificate with a hash looked up by DNS, then you need that to be done DNSSEC. So then it's going to try really hard. But if it finds out that the zone is insecure because a parent has a validated denial of existence proof for a secure delegation, then subsequent lookups in that same domain don't need to try to do DNSSEC because they already know it's insecure. Because you proved that one of the parents didn't have the secure delegation. So that's very unique, I think.
Sure.
What's also very special about GetDNS is that it offers full control over the transports you use for resolving. It also has DNS privacy features, such as DNS over TLS. And you can specify how you want that authenticated, or if you want to use that opportunistically.
Huh?
So
nice. I can.
Yeah, it really tries to put the application in full control, right? And opposed to LDNS, which does things in its own way, but tries to offer maximum flexibility in experimenting with DNS.
Right, I can see how that'd be useful. If your application doesn't want to rely on the system resolver, because say it's going to end up running on Windows or something, and it's not going to have the ability to look up some new record type or to support DNS privacy and things like that, or.
Oh yes. Oh well, the system resolver, you use that basically by get other info, right? The system call, and that doesn't
tell you anything.
Offer you the possibility to look up anything else than addresses. So you need something else to look up other sort of resource records.
And yes. It's also very useful. I could see in like a browser, like you said, for DANE, but also just looking up SRV records, or when www.somewebsite.com is a DNS RR of multiple IP addresses, if the browser could actually get that list, it could try multiple ones if one failed, whereas if you just use get adder info, you get one address.
Right.
Cool. So we saw that I guess GetDNS 090 was recently released, and it was said to be almost feature complete. So what are the remaining features that need to be done to make it feature complete?
Well, some of the features that there's actually only one feature that needs to be implemented, and that's a feature that I don't know if I'm not sure if it's really interesting for applications. It's the follow redirect setting. It only applies to full recursion, and you can turn it off, and then CNAMEs are not followed. But so GetDNS uses lib unbound, right? So it also in its full recursion operation sort of restricted by what lib unbound offers in what it can do. although I have the main developer on unbound write across me, so
That helps.
indeed convince him to accept my patches. But I need to be a little bit more active and ask the original spec developers what they try to accomplish with this function, because I don't see what it offers. But so it's basically all the important things are implemented in current get DNS.
Okay.
And it's also an opportunity to see if there are still more things that need to be fine-tuned or before we release the 1.0.
Okay.
But it sounds like it's...
Do you guys have a timetable for that?
No, not that I'm aware of. It's going to be soonish, though.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in.
No. So if it was only me developing or working on this project, then I could set something, right? But now I have to check with VeriSign Labs and Synodon and Melinda. But I suppose we will have a new release before the coming ITF in Buenos Aires, which is end March.
Okay, because I was just wondering, now that it's almost complete, I imagine there won't be as much churn, and it would be possible to start looking at importing that maybe into FreeBSD and teaching like Fetch, the simple downloader program that's built into FreeBSD to use GetDNS to deal with DNSSEC and give it that extra flexibility where it could be useful. If FreeBSD decides to go to Dane as a way to validate stuff, libfetch is used by our package manager to download things, and it might be useful to use it all in there.
Yes. So this is probably going to be the year of the adaptation, or that we will pursue those software packages and suggest, it might be interesting for you to have a look if you can use this and combine that with Dane. Also, the upcoming OpenSSL is going to have Dane validation, right? So it's perfect timing to get it more adopted than it is currently.
Cool.
Yeah, so, but it has already been quite a stable API though, because we just implementing an existing API.
Right. It was already designed before you started writing any code.
Right. Yeah.
And that was the other thing to mention, is that there's implementations in like 10 different languages now. Like programming languages.
Yes, the style that is used in GetDNS is very much like what you're used to in JavaScript and Python. The result of a lookup is a dictionary with replies in it, and everything can be accessed by string lookups, basically.
So yeah.
So that's So it maps very well on those scripting languages such as Python and Node.js and Java.
That's cool.
Yeah. So on the
PHP. So we have
the GetDNS GitHub account has implementations for, like you said, PHP, Ruby, Python, etc.
But do we have Ruby as well?
Maybe not. I think so. There's lots.
Well,
I need to look now.
But there were quite a few different languages up there.
Yeah, someone was working on Ruby, but I don't know if.
Yeah, I see Ruby bindings. We got PHP, iOS stuff, Node, Python. The whole. I mean, there's a lot.
Yeah.
So nobody has an excuse to not start using this.
Precisely.
Okay, so shifting gears a little bit, could you tell us about your work with path MTU black holes and how that actually affects DNSSEC?
Oh yeah, so besides working on open source projects and implementing open standards in Allan Labs, we also do research on things that affect open standards. And one of the first things I did was researching the pod MTU black holes. And it's basically DNS uses UDP, and if a big UDP message doesn't fit through a certain maximum transfer unit, right? The 1500 bytes which you can put in a packet, then it is fragmented into pieces. And especially with IPv6, this causes problems because with IPv6, fragmentation has moved to the endpoints. With IPv4, this was done transparently by the network, the fragmentation and reassembly. But with IPv6, the endpoints do the fragmentation and reassembly. And so you also need, so not, especially also with IPv6, not all links on the internet have a width of 1500, right? Because there are quite a bit of tunnels, and but the minimum transfer unit for IPv6 is 1280 bytes. That's in the specification. That's how big a link should minimally be. And so what happens is that DNS servers, they are stateless. They wait for a request to come in, and then they answer it, and they forget about it. That's also very UDP-like. Sure. So if that answer doesn't fit on a link on its to the other side, then that the border or the router bordering that link will return a packet-to-big message to the authoritative name server. Because it's stateless, it doesn't know what the question is. The server forgot, so it will not resend. Right, so therefore, name servers always fragment on 1280 to be sure that they don't get that ICMP message that they cannot respond on. But so big DNS answers can happen more easily with DNSSEC, especially with DNS keys and DNS key rollovers, where you have multiple DNS key resource records, including multiple signatures to do the rollover. Sometimes those packages can be larger than 1280 bytes, and so they will be fragmented. But many system administrators on the receiving side, they drop fragments because they think they are dangerous. Sort of denial of service attacks, right? Or no, the other one.
Right. Yeah. They look suspicious.
Yeah. Yes. Right. They are afraid that someone will send the second fragment and the third and all the rest of the fragments, but never the first one. And so they don't receive the answer to the lookup. And we did some research in how much this happens in 2012, and then it was, I think, with RIPE Atlas, which was one of the first use cases of with RIPE Atlas. RIPE Atlas is a measurement network by RIPE.
Yeah, they give you these little dongle thingies, and you hook it up to your network, and it measures things on the internet. I have one in my basement.
So at the time, it was 11% of the probes did not receive So this has improved over the years, but now the Atlas probes also offer to use the resolver that the probe has in the network where it resides. So that's a more realistic measurement, because the computers in the network will actually receive a resolver over DHCP and use that one to do their resolving. And the situation with the resolvers is much worse. I don't know. I believe it was 40% or so last time.
Oh, ouch!
Yes.
That's very noticeable.
Yeah. So DNS has many fallback scenarios to IPv4 and TCP also. When not something is not received immediately, but yes, this problem, this black hole problem, definitely influences the performance of DNS.
Okay.
Because I guess when you're using UDP, you do have the chance that when you have to fragment the message, that you will get part of it, not all of it.
Right.
All right. So, can you tell us, just switching gears a little bit, what are some other projects you'd like to see undertaken to modernize or help secure the internet in general?
Well, now OpenSSL is going to be released with DANE verification. Then I would very much like all applications using TLS to enable DANE verification. That would be very nice.
So I assume that's going to land in LibreSSL as well?
Yes, I suppose it will. Yes.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Good.
So that will also be an opportunity for getDNS, because getDNS, you use getDNS to look up the records in a secure way and then validate the remote certificate with OpenSSL and the new DANE functionality.
Okay.
So what about the DNS infrastructure itself? Obviously, over the last couple of years, we've seen problems with denial of service attacks based on spoofing the address of the requester and flooding people and so on. Do you see a way to
amplification attacks? Yes, so we are also quite involved with the research involved in using more TCP with DNS. So using TCP FOSDEM. If you have had an initial TCP connection and that the handshake was finished, then a subsequent TCP connection to the same host will then not need the handshake, but can send data immediately and get the answer. That's also enabled in getDNS. I think the FreeBSD implementation of TCP fast open might be in the next release. It's not in the current release yet, but I know that Sarah Dickinson is working on that.
Okay.
So that's a solution or a means to deal with those things. And there's also eDNS cookies, which is a similar mechanism, but doing the cookie thing on at the DNS layer. You need a little less state, this it might be better fitted for the resolver to authority traffic. Right. But I don't really know. We need to do more research on that, because TCP might work as well with TCP fast open.
Yeah, it seems like a good compromise between the speed of UDP and the more security or knowing where the endpoint's actually valid of TCP, but without quite as much overhead of the whole three-way handshake, especially under high latency.
That's right. Right. So the amplification can happen because you don't check the source address, right? So it could be forged, and then the answer will go to the victim.
Cool. So what keeps you motivated to work on open source things?
Well, I love programming.
That helps.
Yes, it is my passion and has been for a long time. And especially programming on open source is very nice because of the cooperation. Especially working at a place like a Nelnet Labs is also wonderful, where everybody is working on those open source projects, and we all are so much involved with each other projects as well. And yes, I love to that I'm able to use work that somebody else has done, and I also like it very much that they can use my work. That it's not for some company, that it's for everybody.
That's good.
It's great. It's fantastic.
Cool. So you have any other hobbies outside of open source?
Well, yes. Well, I like the usual things like reading a book and eating, cooking, spending time with my family. I like to camp, going on vacations, that sort of things.
Great.
Cool. And was there anything else you wanted to add before we let you go?
No, I don't think so. Like I said, things are coming together. We have the Dane verification, and we have a library that can do the Dane lookups under difficult circumstances even. So I would really like that other projects have a look at GetDNS and the upcoming OpenSSL and try to put Dane in their products.
Great. Okay, well, we appreciate you coming on the show today, Willem. It was a lot of fun, and wish you guys all the luck with getting to that 1.0 here in the near future.
Thank you.
Okay, we're back. Hope you guys enjoyed the interview. We always enjoy doing those. So, of course, hey, if you want to be interviewed in the future, don't forget to let us know. We'll get you scheduled on one of these upcoming weeks, which would be great. But before we go into our news roundup, of course, we want to start with the other ad this week, which is going to be IX Systems. And for them, the address is going to be ixsystems.com/BSD Now. You want to go get in touch with those guys. Let them hook you up with a new FreeNAS Mini. If you're a home user, trust me, you want to have that. I mean, for backup purposes, for your media server, etc. They're just really stinking cool.
Yep.
And they're pretty much silent. I mean, literally speaking of cool, I don't even hear that fan on. So it just sits in the corner and does its thing, which is what you want in a NAS.
Yep.
So definitely check that out. Of course, that's all based on FreeBSD. So you're getting some awesome BSD goodness there. But of course, if you're into some bigger iron, you can definitely contact IX about that, and they can roll you pretty much anything. I mean, they've built some crazy rigs over the years. And they love doing custom solutions and, of course, customizing it to what you need. So it's not going to be just here's some standard stock model we have sitting on the shelf. Hope that works for you. It's going to be like, no, what are you doing? Oh, you're doing a lot of database. Well, what kind of queries? How many files are you putting on the file system? Are they large? Are they small? Well, does a ZIL make sense? Does it not make sense? Where do you want to put your money so you get the most bang for your buck? And what's the minimum level of performance you're willing to live with? So let's tune it to that. So these sales engineers over there definitely know their stuff and will probably be able to walk you through. And I would guess and estimate a lot of times people end up getting something slightly different than they expected when they started, because IX has the expertise to help you figure out, well, this may work a little better if you do this slightly differently. So definitely get in touch with those guys. They make it easy. Make it look easy anyway.
And they definitely will go out of their way to help you. I had a sudden need. It's like, well, I need one of these machines to test if this solution is going to work. Before, I buy a whole bunch of them. And it's like, but I need to know. So basically, if it doesn't work, I'll buy 4 of these. And if it does work, I'll buy 4 of these that are better and more money. But if they're not going to work right now, then that's not much help to me. It's like, but I need to decide soon because I need the end result, soon. And so it's like, so I need one of these and I need it in a rush. And they were luckily able to help me out there, and that made a big difference for me.
Well, I saw the recent newsletter, too, where they were talking about, obviously, they're a very BSD-friendly company, but they're doing crazy stuff with SmartOS on their servers, and, of course, they roll a lot of Linux. So They can do pretty much anything.
Even if
They're
you're going
just
to
big
put Windows
fans.
on it, it's still the better hardware.
That's right. That's right. They'll make the hardware sing for that Windows box. So they can definitely hook you up with whatever it is. If you need a little bit of everything, they'll do that too. And get you all set up and configured the way you want it before it goes out the door, so it's ready to be shipped right to the data center. So definitely get in touch with them and just try the IX experience. I promise you'll be pleasantly surprised. By the way, have you ordered any new ones yet? You were working on that video encoding. You decided not to do the NVIDIA?
Well, no.
You're going to do the Intel?
Yeah, we're going to do the Intel. So we ordered one of the new V5 Intels, the Skylake version. And then we have to test the software and see if the driver is going to work with Skylake. If it doesn't, then we're going to order older Haswell CPUs instead.
Sure.
So yes, they're rushing me one of these Intel GPU encoding machines so that I can try the software on it and see if the Skylake driver works good enough for the video encoding. And then based on the first machine, we will then decide and then buy 4 more of them.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, yeah, try getting that kind of helpfulness from any other company. So, okay, well, let's get right into the news roundup here. So first up, we have it's kind of an oldie but a goodie. The book called A Quarter Century of Unix is now available for free download via PDF, which is pretty darn cool. So it's a little bit older book, but it takes a long look at all the history of Unix, which of course we wouldn't have BSD without. So we do got to give our respect to those who came before here.
Yes.
But we have the link up here where you can download the PDF, so just take a look at that. But also want to mention they do have a print version of it still around, and it's available via Amazon. And that link's also going to be on the URL in the show notes. So if you find the book useful and want to give back a little bit, consider buying a copy, since a percentage of that's still going to go to the original author. So definitely good to support these kind of things and encourage folks to write more.
But yeah, they got permission to release a PDF of the scanned version of the original 1994 book.
That's nice. That's nice. Yeah, so if you're doing any research, I can think of students maybe writing something on the history of BSD. This may be a good one to check out.
Well, I read just the foreword, and it even specifically mentions it's like, every book about Unix always contains a little bit at the beginning about the history. And oftentimes it's obviously not very in-depth, but sometimes it's not even correct. And so this book actually has some of the first, the real history, the very beginning stuff. And
I like the little comment they have above the code snippet right there on the second page.
Yes.
You were not expected to understand this. Yeah, I have no idea what it's doing. That's pretty darn cool. Okay, so what's up next, Allan? We have some great news about vimage fixes going in.
Yes, so as part of the January newsletter from the FreeBSD Foundation, they announced that they have sponsored a project for Bjorn Zeeb, or BZ at freebsd.org, has been awarded a project grant to finalize and integrate the work done on the vimage network virtualization stack. So this is, with vimage, basically you can have a jail that instead of borrowing 1 or 2 IP addresses from the interface on the host, it would actually have its own interface that can then be bridged to a physical interface or done something else with. So that means each jail has its own network interface, its own can have its own firewall, it can have its own routing table, and all the different stuff, which comes in very handy. Quite often I've had a jail where it'd be much more convenient if it could use a different routing table than the host. And you can kind of do that with the FIBs, the multiple routing tables, but vimage is just so much nicer. Because with vimage, it even means you can, have each jail just use DHCP to get its address, or whatever else. And, being able to have its own firewall. With vimage, a jail becomes that much closer to a virtual machine, but again, without any of the overhead. Currently a number of bugs in the vimage prevent it from being enabled by default, so you always have to compile a custom kernel. And, the FreeBSD Foundation even notes here, the recent interest in container technology, FreeBSD users are attempting to use vimage despite its experimental label and are encountering warnings about leaked memory every time they stop a jail and concerns about stability, where sometimes it will crash. FreeBSD users and appliance builders strongly desire using this feature in production, and so the Foundation is hoping to get that feature fixed up.
Yeah. It's just time to make it a real deal. And it looks like they're trying to target getting this done by the end of March and have it included in 11.0. So,
yes.
Yeah, looking forward to having that.
Yep. They say Bjorn will test and update incremental patches for the vimage from the Perforce repository and present them for review before committing them into the FreeBSD. The main areas of focus are obviously the network stack teardown and the ordering of all the operations and all the locking, and then also addressing any remaining memory leaks that might be on teardown, so that if you build and tear down jails very frequently, you don't eventually run out of memory. The work will be validated with scripted integration tests in order to find interactions and possible race conditions between different network stack layers and the interactions with layer crossing components like firewalls.
Nice.
What happens if you're creating a jail as one of your physical interfaces goes away or something, and how do we make sure no matter what happens, your box doesn't crash, which is kind of the important part. But yes, we're very much hoping to see that in time for 11. That would be a big win.
Yeah. That's something I've been just wanting for years, man, to see that become a real deal. That's just going to make things like IO cage and stuff out of box just so much cooler. Be able to do a lot of things. Less excuse for needing to use a VM now, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so next up we have an article about building a SMTPD mail server on OpenBSD. So we've got a new FAQ has been updated with a walkthrough of how to do a complete installation to get that set up. So how did they do this here, Allan? Looks like...
so they basically rebuilt the FAQ for OpenSMTPD on its website, and they kind of walk you through everything you need. After you follow the tutorial, you'll have a server that accepts mail for multiple domains with virtual users. So, Bob at domain 1 and Bob at domain 2 can be separate mailboxes.
Okay.
Allows virtual users to authenticate, log in to do, SMTP authentication and send emails, apply anti-spam and antivirus filters to all incoming emails, provide IMAP access to all the virtual users, and even provide statistics and summaries of the statistics. So it walks you through setting up, create the virtual mail user to store those mailboxes, create the filters that'll, check against the DNS blacklists like Spam Cop and Spam Hoss, filter stuff through Spam Assassin and Clam AV, set up your rules, set up your TLS so that all your mail can be encrypted as it talks to other mail servers, link in your base users so that the physical users on the system will have mailboxes as well, set up the ports you're going to listen on for, incoming and outgoing, and which ones, if you're going to accept SMTP submit on port 587, then it should have TLS required and so on. All the stuff. They even have a rule here to avoid using IPv6 when talking to Gmail, because apparently that was a problem, although it's commented out at the moment. But then using Dovecot for IMAP and actually handling the delivery and putting it in the mailboxes. Creating a bunch of rules to block invalid incoming mail to stop more spam. Using aliases to route certain mail to the black hole so you don't have to read it. Having your user database with bcrypt hashed passwords. Setting up your Clam AV and Spam Assassin. And rules for setting up the mail server and making it authenticate the users. And even... setting up a cron tab to mail you weekly statistics on how much mail has gone through your mail server.
Nice.
Yeah.
That is pretty slick. Okay.
It's all very straightforward and quite minimalist. Like the amount of commands you have to type is very, very few.
And yet another weekend project I need to get to. So I just need to play around with that. That looks really cool. Okay, well, last up here in the news roundup, we got an introduction to the FreeBSD open source operating system on live lessons. So, first of all, if you don't know, Dr. Kirk McCusick's been one of the most foremost authorities on FreeBSD for some time now.
Yep.
And he's also the co-author of the design and implementation of FreeBSD books, along with George Neville Neal and Robert Watson. And he's taught numerous classes on all the same stuff here. So, another good reason to come to a BSD conference. Maybe you can meet him, by the way.
He often does little... talks. I know Meet BSD last year, he did 2 years ago, or a year and a half, whatever it was. He did the history of the TCP IP stack and how that started, and that's just a great story.
Anyway,
I bought one of his DVDs of a talk similar to this about the history. And this one, now that I know a bit about development in C, I'd definitely be interested in this one.
Well, you have to take a look because they've made this available. This is now available as part of the Addison Wesley Professional Live Lessons series. There's a 10-hour video lecture you can now purchase to take his class, basically from the comfort of your own home or couch or office or wherever. Watch them on the bus. Still lots of good information there, right?
Yep, and they have excerpts from a couple of different chapters, so you can try it out before you buy it. There's chapter 1.2, comparing FreeBSD with Linux. Chapter 2.1, components of a process, like a username program. And 5.1, kernel I/O structures. So you can kind of, try it out a bit and see, if it's on a level that you're going to want or whatever before you drop the, even with the discount, it's, but it's definitely a good deal for that much video.
That's definitely for sure. I mean, that's like a college level class right there. But of course, if you're an aspiring FreeBSD developer, maybe a kernel guy, application developer, pretty much any developer who's interested in learning a little bit about how FreeBSD works, you should consider this. This might be an invaluable resource in the learning process. But I just wanted to read you a little bit of the description here of kind of an overview of what the video is going to cover. But it starts with an introduction to the FreeBSD community, explains how it differs from the Linux ecosystem. The video then goes on to provide a firm background in the FreeBSD kernel. The POSIX kernel interfaces are used as examples where they're defined, and where they're not defined, the FreeBSD interfaces are described. The video covers basic kernel services, locking, process structure, signaling, signal handling, jails, virtual and physical memory management. And there'll be a lot of good stuff in there. Also, the kernel I/O structure is described, showing how I/O is multiplexed, and the virtual file system interface is used to support multiple file systems. Devices are described, showing disk management and their auto configuration. The organization and implementation of the fast file system is described, and concluding with a discussion of how to maintain consistency in the face of hardware software failure. The video also includes an overview of the ZFS file system and covers the socket-based network architecture, layering, and routing issues. And then the presentation emphasizes code organization, data structure navigation, and algorithms. Darn, there's a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah, and definitely, if you have any interest in building something on FreeBSD, this kind of gives you the roadmap so that when you want to go look at how does this part of the kernel work, you will know how it's organized so that you can find the right file and start prodding at it.
That's right. So normally the videos would set you back a cool $300, but now you can pick it up for $239. So definitely on sale, but that's a good discount. So we can't recommend this enough, but also don't want to forget, try and make it out to one of these conferences, like BSD Can or Meet BSD. He's usually at both those, where you can talk to Dr. McCusick in person. So that just gives you an idea of some of the caliber of talent that shows up at these things. So definitely try and make it out.
One of the best people to have dinner with at a conference.
That's right. Okay, we got a bunch of Beastie bits, almost as much as the news roundup here, so we're going to have to get to those. But before we do, really quick, of course, we want to mention the last sponsor this week, which is going to be Tarsnap. And you can go to tarsnap.com/BSD Now and get signed up right now. Definitely take a look at their new website if you haven't been there in a while. I know I don't go there that often because it just works and it's so cheap. It's not like I'm putting money in anytime soon. So it's pretty darn cool.
I was actually talking to Colin the other day. I was looking at my credit card statement, and at the bottom it's like, if you made only the minimum payments, it would take you 37 years and 9 months to pay this back. And I was like, yeah, that's crazy. Then I looked at my Tarsnap invoice, and I was like, it should do something like that. It's like at your current rate of usage, your current balance will run out in 10 years and 9 months. It's like, wow, at this rate, Colin's not going to get much money out of me.
Well, hey, you can take advantage of Colin as well by going to Tarsnap today and getting it installed and set up and start doing your backups there. I mean, they measure it in pico dollars. Come on. That's about as dirt cheap as it can get. So, of course, everything's encrypted, which is one of the best parts about Tarsnap. It's fully encrypted on your end before it goes out over the wire, so you don't got to worry about somebody snooping in transit or somebody with access to the system on the other end potentially leaking your data. You don't have to worry about Colin getting his fingers broken by nefarious individuals who want access to your stuff because he doesn't have access to it. He doesn't have a key, so no amount of rubber hose encryption will work, right?
Cryptanalysis. So, but even in their example here, they have Alice has 7.5 gigs of data that's currently on the disk, but over the course of all the differential backups has actually backed up 15.8 gigabytes, and the total cost is $3.95. a month.
Dirt cheap.
There's no way you could do that any cheaper.
That's right. So come on, guys. There's really no reason not to do this. Definitely check it out today and get set up. He's got clients available for just about everything up there. So even if you want to run it on Windows, it's there.
But yes, the big difference is compared to any other backup product you might buy, you get the source code.
That's right. So definitely take a look at that today. Get signed up, and if you have a Tarsnap success story where it saved your bacon, send that in to us. We may want to hear about that.
And if you don't, you will soon.
That's right. So we'll definitely want to share that. Okay, so let's get into the beastie bits here. So first up, we have Faces of FreeBSD did a profile of Sean Bruno, who we've had on the show in the past. So definitely want to check that out. Any interesting tidbits in there you want to pass along?
It just covers a little bit of everything from his time in the Army to getting started at a little appliance vendor and going through to working at Yahoo and where he works now. Touches on a bit of everything.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. Basically, his whole story in here, going from, when he first started just trying to fix a net SNMP plugin and, was a Red Hat user and didn't know much about BSD, and then when he was, writing drivers for RAID controllers and network cards now, or his new job is the liaison between the FreeBSD project and the Intel networking team, where he coordinates their commits to the Intel driver and the FreeBSD tree.
Cool.
Recently he's done the ARM and MIPS cross building so that we can have packages.
Which, yes, makes it, we don't have to compile on ARM anymore, which royally sucks.
Yeah. So it just shows, even from humble beginnings as just a guy trying to fix a port, you can end up doing all the things.
Nice.
Also has a call out here for if you're from an area of the world where it's underserved by FreeBSD's current mirroring system, they have the setup for the new types of mirrors that FreeBSD uses for the packages and the ISOs and so on. So, cool. I think he specifically mentions South America, India, Japan, and the UK. If you can help set up a mirror, that might be useful. And they have the links to the wiki information about both the generic mirror and the tiny mirror setups, depending on what you're able to do.
Okay, well, next up, we have Michael W. Lucas has something interesting here. So if you've ever wanted to see your name in a book, you have an opportunity now. So it looks like, I guess for the new book you guys are doing together, they have the opportunity for people to sponsor it. So if you'd like to sponsor, you'll get your name in the book. So I guess $20 makes you an ebook sponsor, and we'll get your name in the ebook. And then if you'd like your name in print, which is really cool if you can have that on the shelf, and somebody comes over and you're like, well, let me just, oh, look, who is that? Oh, that's me. Yes. How cool is that, right? You can get that in a print copy for $100 as well. So you can get your name in both of them. So definitely check that out. That's definitely a neat way to help sponsor the creation of some of these new books. You have anything you want to add to that, Allan, since that's kind of your and his thing?
Yeah, it's well, the sponsoring is specifically for Michael, not for me, and it's just the book's taking slightly longer and it's slightly more complicated than we thought, and it's messing with the schedule a bit. So this is a way to help it get finished, because I know lots of people are waiting for this book.
Yes, you want this book, so help make that happen sooner. Okay, well, next up we have a Beehive Windows support's been merged into the stable 10 branch, and it's going to be included in FreeBSD 10.3, which is in code freeze, I guess, now. And I think was it beta 1 is supposed to be hitting over the weekend or this Friday or something.
Sometime soon. Well, it'll be alpha or beta, one of the two. I guess beta probably.
I think it's beta 1.
Yeah.
But I'll have to double check the release schedule. So yeah, that's really, really cool. Neat to see that landed. Yeah, man, I got to roll a PCBSD version of it now. Darn.
So there was a quite good chance that this wasn't going to land, but thanks to Yamagi Burmeister, who did the work on doing the MFC and testing it all to make sure that it didn't break anything, and got it all committed in time. And so that means that on both Intel and AMD, you'll be able to use Beehive with the UEFI booting for, they tested Arch Linux with a Linux kernel 4.3.3, Ubuntu 5.10, FreeBSD current, FreeBSD 10.2, OpenBSD 5.8, SmartOS latest version, and Windows 10 build 15.11.
Nice.
But basically, this is everything you need to be able to run Windows or SmartOS or any of those OSs in Beehive. So this should be quite good.
Another reason why people need to upgrade to 10.3 as soon as it lands. There's going to be a lot of cool new stuff there.
Yes.
Okay,
But
so the next
basically provide all this stuff to the people that haven't wanted to jump ahead to head.
That's right. All right, so the next one here is kind of tongue-in-cheek, but FreeBSD outsells Windows by almost 2-to-1. And you're like, what? What is this you're talking about? Well, we have a link to Ars Technica here talking about the gaming consoles specifically. And EA, I guess, accidentally let slip the number of sales for all the consoles out there. And, the PS4, it looks like, is kicking the Xbox One's butt a little bit here, which, of course, Xbox One being Windows-based, PS4 being FreeBSD-based. Haha. There you go.
Yes, it's about 36 million PS4s to 19 million Xboxes.
That's right. So, yeah, that's a pretty good lead. See, so if your other companies out there use FreeBSD in your products, you'll sell better. It just makes sense. Okay, so next up we have looks like a rant about the Whois protocol. So what is the beef there?
So this is a contributor that's been working on the FreeBSD Whois client. And turns out that it's slightly complicated by the fact that with all these new TLDs coming out, how do we make the Whois client so it doesn't have to be updated every day to support the new ones that come out every day? And so, firstly, it's like the Whois protocol is unspeakably crappy. There's actually not really a defined protocol. Everybody can...
It's just a nebulous thing.
Yeah, you send one line of text, the server interprets that and sends back some text. And maybe it can be a referral, but that's not very well defined, and so on. So there's a couple of different options on how to solve the problem of doing Whois on new, different TLDs. Solution 0, because I like they started at 0. Rely on a knowledgeable user to specify the server that should be used. It's like, well, that's great if they're a power user, but not so much for everybody else. Number 1 is have a built-in curated mapping that maps, what you might be querying for to the right server that'll have the answer. Obviously, this is the approach used by the Debian Whois client, but with the vast number of new TLDs that are coming out, every week, it means that, a couple of times a week you'd have to update the Whois client, which really doesn't help much.
Sure.
Solution 2 is the whois-servers.net. So a group set up this domain and basically has subdomains that refer to the right place. So if you want to look up a .ca domain, you hit ca.whois-servers.net and it can look it up. So that works quite well. Unfortunately, even they are having trouble keeping up with the rate of new TLDs and pointing it to the new servers. Partly because some of these ones, unlike country codes and so on, if it's a private company, they're not really announcing themselves in a standard way. Number 3 is to just fall back to trying whois.nic.tld because, that's the general place where it is and something that all the new TLDs could do to make this easier. And number 4 is to follow a referral from a server. You hit somebody like Aaron and it forwards you to say, hey, it's actually, that's subleased over here or whatever. But they also point out the problem of things like academic domains. So, for the US, there's .edu, right? But for other countries, because the US claimed that. First. Yeah. So in the UK, universities are .ac as an academic.uk. But the top level .uk Whois server doesn't know to refer you or doesn't send a referral saying, hey, you need to go talk to the educational Whois server. Because it's actually a different company that runs it. And so that's a bit awkward. And, there is an entry for ac.uk.whois-servers.net, but how does the Whois client know when it's, a 2-letter domain name?
Sure.
Like xe.net, versus when that's actually a second-level domain name that has its own separate Whois server. And so he kind of, in this article, they talk about different approaches they tried to deal with that stuff. They also added standard handling for more NIC formats. So if you have, your RIPE username, which is like something -RIPE or -NICAD, it handles those now using special case setups. It also added support for AS numbers and switching support for AS numbers from the user having to manually specify the AS number whois server to it automatically knowing, hey, if your whoising just a number with no dots in it, then it's probably an AS number.
Nice.
And a bunch of other things like this. And
more than you ever wanted to know about the whois protocol or lack thereof, it sounds like.
Yes, I was saying, so the FreeBSD whois client now supports 4 different referral formats since there's no real standard, and 2 of which occur with varying space and casing from different servers, and so that could be pretty ugly.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, we got next up here, it looks like Will Bachman. Well, I did it. Let me just tell what happened here. So last week we did our talk with me and Ken about Lumina and the new PCBSD stuff. And then I did an interview last week with Will Bachman on BSD Talk where we kind of just expanded upon that, talked a little bit about jails and system management in general. So definitely check that out if you get a chance. Will's a good friend of the show here. So thank you, Will, for the opportunity to do that. We appreciate it. Okay, what's this last one? I guess there's a couple more here. So we got FOSDEM 2016, the slides from 5 years of a LumaOS talk.
Yes.
Okay. Explain to us what this is.
So basically, it's just an overview of what's happened since it's now been 5 years since Illumos was founded as the open source fork of OpenSolaris before that went away.
Sure.
And they talk about, what comes to mind when you think about Illumos is, the things that were there before they started, right? ZFS, dtrace, Crossbow, which is their thing like vimage, Zones, which is their thing like jails, and then SMF, their service management framework, which is the thing that BSD doesn't really have. And then they go into a bit of a prehistory about that, but then they talk about what's actually new and what Illumos has managed to achieve in its 5 years, including, updating their bootloader to support UEFI and a bunch of other things like that.
Okay.
It was just an interesting talk that happened at FOSDEM. I happened to sit beside the guy that gave the talk at the airport in Montreal where we were waiting for the flight. But he and I had met before, actually, at the ZFS Developer Summit.
Nice. Okay, so explain this next tweet to me here. I guess they were counting machines.
Yes. So
how did that work?
There was a tweet from the Saturday of FOSDEM with a breakdown of the number of machines running different OSs that they fingerprinted on the wireless, and it showed that there was only one FreeBSD machine, and there were like 7 OpenBSD machines or something. The main reason for that, as I mentioned at the top of the show, is that most of the FreeBSD people were actually at a dev summit in a different hotel. And so we weren't on that wireless, and that skewed the numbers. So that tweet got a lot of attention on the internet. So I made sure to include this tweet, which is from the same person, but counting for the second day, the Sunday, where there was, say, a BSD Dev Room, and all the BSD people came out. And in that one, you can see that FreeBSD was the most popular BSD.
There you go.
Yes.
Oh, good deal. Good deal. Okay. Well, I'm glad we cleared that up. I'll keep putting out any FUD there about it.
Yes.
So let's get to the feedback.
Reddit.
That's right. That's right. So let's get over to the feedback and questions. So we got Antonio is going to lead off this week with a question about a book. He said, "Hey guys, great show. Keep up the awesome work. The question I have is about the ZFS book that Allan co-wrote. I was wondering what file format and template you use. Do you write it using LaTeX, DocBook, etc.? I really enjoyed the layout of the book, and the content helped me better understand the file system to end all file systems. I'm looking forward to the next book. Keep up the great work."
Sadly, as you'll learn if you go read the FAQ on Michael Lucas's website, for almost all publishing, you end up having to use Microsoft Word. So to mitigate the pain, what Michael and I did is, because we were both of us trying to work on it at the same time, we used Google Docs to write the drafts. And once we were pretty sure we had everything nailed out, then Michael brought it over into Microsoft Word and applied all the styling. So, the different fonts for command output and for file names and all that kind of stuff. And then generated PDF of that. And that's what we send out to people for our technical review and our layout review and so on. And then that Word doc with the track changes mode or whatever is used back and forth between the copy editors and the other stuff. And then that's finally what actually ends up going to the publisher to print the physical book and the ebook. Sadly, LibreOffice, works great, doesn't necessarily reproduce perfectly with what the printers end up using. And all the print industry is standardized on Microsoft Word. So I currently have a subscription with Microsoft where I pay them $7 a month for Microsoft Word, and so that I can cancel it when I'm done with the second book and don't need Microsoft Word anymore.
That's one way to do it, right?
Yeah. It was cheaper than buying the the Office package
Full
or something, and this way I can get rid of it when I don't need it.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So yeah, sadly not LaTeX or DocBook.
That's right. Okay, so next up here we have, let me see, Simon writes in. He says, "Hey, Chris and Allan, love the show. I'm not yet a full-time user of BSD, but listening to the show has slowly been converting me.
Mm-hmm.
What I do have right now is a FreeNAS box, which I use to store family photos and videos and share it via Samba. My question is, yesterday I had a bit of a scare as I saw ZFS reporting something like this, and then he shows us the status where it says one or more devices that experience an error resulting in data corruption, applications may be affected, et cetera, et cetera. He said it lists a whole bunch of videos of my kids, listed it afterwards as corrupt files. His pool is a 2 terabyte by 6 terabyte total stripe array. He said I switched the NAS off and resetted the HDs to see if that would help. Then I turned it back on and tried to copy files off to another PC via Samba. I got a read error and then gave up and went back to look at FreeNAS again, and even more files were listed as corrupt under ZPool status. I was then about to give up, and I thought I'd try a scrub to see if it would help. There was no redundancy in the array, so not sure if I could. After 5-hour scrub, the result was this, and it says scrub repaired 0 with 0 errors, a certain date and time. How is it possible that the errors could fix themselves? I tried to view the corrupted files, and they viewed fine.
Well, you shouldn't have ever created a pool with no redundancy. That was a bad idea.
Bad.
And you should back that stuff up now and fix that. If you have 4 terabytes or less of stuff, then you could take those 3 2 terabyte hard drives and do a RAID Z1 and have 4 terabytes of space and the redundancy. You cut off the actual zpool status output that might have indicated what some of the problems are. So it's hard to say, but it could have just been that, when ZFS tried to read that file, because of a loose cable or something, there was corruption, and then when you reseated it and rebooted, it solved it. Yeah, hard to say. But
either
I would
way,
definitely,
let this be a lesson.
Yes. Also, I don't know what version of FreeNAS you're using, but it's probably kind of old because I see the all the links to the error messages still report sun.com instead of the Lumos site. Mm-hmm. You probably, you might need to update your FreeNAS as well in that case.
Use this opportunity just to upgrade it all, do the pool right, and get all your data backed up. Hey, maybe TarSnap would be a good thing to apply here too.
You definitely want to back that up because that's pretty hinky sounding.
Okay. So next up, we have a Christian who writes in. He says, "Hey guys, relatively short time listener to your show, around episode 80 or so. Been enjoying it immensely."
45 episods already.
I know. That's a long time now for us. You're almost to a year.
Yeah.
Anyway, he says, "Keep up the great and informative work. I came across this thread on Arch Linux forums and found it sad and amusing at the same time. EFI variables are mounted to sys as read-write by default, and doing a simple RMRF of / ends up wrecking the machine, rendering it unable to post. All I can say is thankfully I don't use systemd anymore," and then he provides the link. Enjoy the rest of your week. So we included this because it's kind of funny, and I saw this go around Twitter earlier in the week. So
there's a couple things. Basically under like /sys /something else are all these files named after the EFI variables, and the content is the content of that variable. And if you RM them, then it removes them from the EFI, which should be fine. But with the specific motherboard that this user had, and possibly some others, if those variables are missing, the machine won't post, which is a bug in the EFI, not really Linux's fault, but and then the other thing is, if as we recall from our interview with Brian Cantrell, it's actually an error for rm-rf/ to actually work, because the standard says you cannot remove the directory you are currently in, and you are always in a directory somewhere, even if it's /. Right. And this is why RM on FreeBSD since 2009 or earlier even, I forget when, will not actually let you do that. But, there's quite a bit of argument going back and forth on Linux, and mostly their opinion is, well, don't do that then. It's not necessarily a problem with exposing the EFI variables. It's a problem with, buggy firmware and you deleting everything. It's like, well, if you delete everything, you kind of expect your machine not to work anymore. Maybe not to be able to post, but yes. But,
Non-bootable is one thing. Not be able to turn on, it's something else.
Yeah. But in general, most /sys is mostly read-only, or it's a pseudo file system, so it's mostly, not actually a file system. But yeah, it seems like maybe they need to do something about that.
Cool.
All right, so last question comes in
you want to
from
read this one?
Philip. He says, hello, Allan and Chris. First of all, thank you for the great show. He says, a couple of months ago, I was looking for a podcast to get my BSD fix, and after finding BSD Now, my search was over, and I stuck with you guys. I recently set up 3 IOCage jails to host 3 Radius servers with different areas of responsibility. I used to run them as virtual instances of one Radius server, but for easier management, I decided to separate them and use jails to save resources compared to doing full VMs. Now I'd like to use ZFS send to send the whole server to a backup machine that's offsite. When I run the remote ZFS receive command as root, it works just fine. For added security, I'd like to run the command as a regular user, to whom I grant permissions to allow via ZFS allow. At first, I granted the basics that needed to be required for receiving, and I managed to transfer a couple of data sets, but then it failed in the way pasted below. Both systems are running FreeBSD 10.2 and are up to date, patch levels and packages and so on. He says, do you have any idea what might be wrong or have suggestions towards best practice for backing up IOCage to remote systems? I'd like to use the power of ZFS here. So it looks like when he's replicating, he's running into a permission error. I'm guessing the most likely culprit for that is lacking the permission to set a specific property that's trying to be replicated. Looks like he's set most of the possible permissions here. It's actually a thing I would like to do for ZFS is make a meta property or meta allow thing that would just be all. In particular, if new properties get added, all would cover them as well. Mm-hmm. Whereas currently, when I upgrade from 10.2 to 10.3, there's some new property and I have to go and reallow it on all my machines. And also, when I'm trying to script that with Puppet, I have to actually figure out the version and what features go where, because if I try to allow a newer feature on an older machine, it won't work. Mm-hmm. The other thing you will have problem with is even if you allow the mount permission, you can't mount as a non-root user unless you've set the VFS user underscore mount to 1. And that even with that, there's still a requirement that the directory that you're mounting the file system into has to be owned by the user that's doing the mounting to stop them from mounting over top of other people's stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I imagine he's just got to go find the magic property that's not set and enable it. And hopefully it'll be good to go.
It'd be really nice if ZFS could provide better error messages. Rather than permission denied, it could say which permission was denied.
Yeah. Failed applying this property or this permission.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, we appreciate you sending that in, Philip. Mm-hmm. So as we close the show here, guys, just to remind you, of course, send your questions, comments, any show ideas or topics, or if you have a story that you found, we love it when you guys send stuff in. Sometimes we've seen it, sometimes we haven't. We do want to make sure it gets included in either that week's episode or a future one. If we're already slammed and booked, just keep sending it in. We will get to them as soon as we possibly can. So again, send those into feedback@bsdnow.tv. That's the only place we monitored, so don't necessarily tweet it to us or put it on a YouTube comment or something. We probably won't see it. We might, but good chance we won't. So send it to feedback@bsdnow.tv. That's the only way you can be sure that it'll get looked at and taken care of. And of course, if you have a question, send it in there. We may not respond right away because, hey, we're going to read it on the air. that week, and we'd rather just share it with everybody that way. So please try and do that, and we would appreciate it. Of course, if you want to come on the show for an interview or know somebody who should, send that in as well so we can get that scheduled. And I think there was something you wanted to mention on the closing here too,
yes,
Allan?
I just wanted to give out a special thanks to Rodrigo Osario for organizing the BSD Dev Room at FOSDEM. If he hadn't done it, I don't think there would have been one. So thank you very much for that. You did a great job. And special thanks to Christoph Provost for organizing the FreeBSD Dev Summit on the Saturday at the last minute and for actually sponsoring that out of his own pocket. So thank you very much for that. And also thank you very much for organizing the dinner we had on the Saturday night, and actually the one we had on Sunday, but that was a little more ad hoc. But that was very good, and look forward to seeing you and everybody else in Tokyo.
Nice. Okay, well, great. Well, again, thanks for watching. We'll be back same time next week.